I have always been a late adopter, but this is why I finally decided to get an iPhone, so I could take pictures like these. And yes, Leo has a flask in that picture. I've always been somewhat skeptical about the latest technology, and you can see I have passed my skeptical nature on to my children. When I first got my new phone, I was very disciplined about using it. I would take it out, take somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 pictures every day of my newborn son, and then I would put it away, and that's all I used it for. And I was lucky. I had paternity leave, which meant that I got to spend long days with Leo, going on walks, reading books, going to the park. It was great. I really loved spending all that time with him. But the thing about babies is they're not great conversationalists. So Leo and I would be at the park, and he would be happily playing with a rock, and I would sometimes wish I had someone to talk to who knew more than 2 words. And that's when I first began to fully appreciate the power of my new phone. And I was immediately sucked in. You've all been there. It provided companionship, news, entertainment, anything I could want. And what was wrong with that? Leo and I were both happy. He had his smooth, shiny rock, and I had my smooth, shiny phone. But one day, I looked up from my phone, and Leo was gone. I had gone down the rabbit hole. I didn't know how much time has passed. Fortunately, Leo had just crawled to another part of the playground where I couldn't see him, but this was alarming to say the least. I had been experiencing what media scholar Douglas Rushkoff calls digiphrenia, which means being in 2 places at the same time, but actually being neither place. How often was I doing this? What kind of a driver had I become? What kind of a dinner companion? What kind of an employee? I realized that I had taken my relationship with my phone to the next level. I brought it to bed with me every night. It was the first thing I checked in with in the morning. This thing that was supposed to just fill in the empty spaces between important events had instead become all I did. I was ready to admit that I had a problem, and I wanted to do something about it. So my first thought was to go cold turkey. I would build a big bonfire and just burn all my devices in a big ceremonial fire. I would go back to using landlines and payphones. I would dust off my crank record player and go off the grid. But I'm not a Luddite. Technology is part of my job. And what I really wanted was just to experience life without this digital stuff, to be reminded what that was like. And so I settled on this idea of a fast, a concentrated break from all my devices. And because I'm a teacher, I decided I wanted to explore this through a class. So I designed this class, and I was curious what millennials thought about this. Did they struggle with addiction the way I did? Did it have negative effects on their relationships? So, first day of class, I gave them the syllabus, and I introduced them to this central project of our class, which was going to be this thing, the digital fast, and I laid out the ground rules for them. Starting on Friday evening, going until Sunday evening, they would disconnect all devices and screens, all this stuff. And there was this panic. They freaked out. I mean, it was you could feel it in the air. And I really felt, and I never felt this before as a teacher, like they were moments away from just packing up their bags and walking out the door and dropping the class because they were going to refuse to do this. And they explained their panic to me. How are we supposed to stay in touch with our parents? How are we supposed to make plans with our friends? How are we going to know what's going on in the world? What about Netflix, music, boredom? This is going to be impossible, Professor Stern. Why are you making us do this? Why do you hate us? And I really think there was, for some of them, this sense that I was punishing them because I wanted them to experience the kind of boring childhood that I had without Snapchat and Instagram and YouTube. And I explained to them that even though they're digital natives and I'm not, that I was addicted just like them. And they really didn't like that word, addicted. That really struck a nerve with them. How can you be addicted to something that is so essential to your life? Can you be addicted to air? But to their credit, they went on the digital fast. The Boston Globe wrote an article about us. Well, I should say that some of them went on the digital fast. About 2/3 of my students successfully went screen and device free for the whole 48-hour period, along with me. Another handful failed within the first hour. They just failed miserably, didn't even try. And then another small group were able to give up certain aspects of their devices, but not others. And ultimately, I decided that it was all a really good experience for us, because even failing, even preparing to go on a digital fast really helps you learn what your digital habits are. And that's valuable information. Of course, it is much better to actually go on a digital fast, I think. So I really liked this experience, and I wanted to kind of keep it going. So I gave some talks here in Portsmouth about the digital fast, and there started to be some interest in doing a Seacoast version of it. So together with a great group of people, we created the Seacoast Digital Fast, which has now happened the past 2 Augusts. Some of you may have participated in it, and it's been great, and we're going to continue doing it. So what happens when you shut down your screens for a weekend? Well, the first thing that happens is that you immediately want to document this really cool thing that you're doing. So for the Seacoast Digital Fast this past August, we had a kickoff party right here at 3S. So participants could gather, and we could all kind of communally shut down our devices together. And so many of us had the same experience. As we were shutting down our phones, we wanted to use those phones to take pictures of ourselves shutting down our phones, which we could then post to social media and talk about this really cool thing we were doing and wait for the likes and comments to roll in. And that's one of many things that you are kind of attuned to when you're on a digital fast. You notice every time you have that twitchy urge to check your phone. It's so much like the urge to smoke another cigarette when you're trying to quit, or have a drink, or eat another potato chip even though you're not hungry. It's not that often associated to an actual need, but it's more often associated with some kind of vague time filler or crutch. And a lot of times you just do it because someone else took out their phone. Another thing you notice is it feels really good to do one thing at a time. A woman who participated in the digital fast told me that she felt like she was a much better parent during that weekend because she was more calm and present with her kids. She wasn't constantly being pulled away by all these ultimately meaningless little tasks. When you're cooking, you're cooking. When you're having a conversation, you're having a conversation. When you're playing with your kids, you're playing with your kids. Without our screens, we are more connected to the world. Without GPS, we learn how to get around. We learn more about where we live. We inevitably spend more time outside. You pay more attention to natural cycles like sunrise and sunset and what your body is telling you. One of my students told me that the sleep that he got during the digital fast weekend was some of the best sleep he ever can remember getting. Our news feeds, or all of our feeds, news, entertainment, social, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, never end. The feeds never end. And yet when we're scrolling through them, in the back of our head, we're thinking, I'm going to get caught up. I'm going to get to the end of this story, right? But there is no end, right? Trump is never going to stop, right? So every once in a while, it feels good to just acknowledge that the feeds will never end, that you'll never be caught up, and step away from it. You can always go back to it. A digital faster observed to me that during that weekend, if there was some kind of a world catastrophe, he would hear people yelling in the street about it. Otherwise, he was okay taking the chance of taking 48 hours away from the information. And on Monday, he could check back in, probably get caught up inside of 10 minutes, and he was pretty confident that he wouldn't have missed that much. Our devices allow us to constantly cancel and reschedule and live this sort of frantic, non-committal life. When I was doing the digital fast this past summer, I made plans with my brother-in-law to go for a run. And because we were on a digital fast, I couldn't text him about it. We had to make the plans, on Friday. So we were going to meet on Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. at the corner of Broad and Middle. And when I woke up on Sunday morning, I didn't feel like going for a run. So I wanted to cancel my plans with Jake. But that would have involved walking downtown, somehow finding him, and canceling, which seemed really difficult and kind of ridiculous. And so I kept my plans, and I went for the run. And I'm better for it. People are more complicated offline. The internet presents a much more extreme version of everything. It's much easier to see people in black and white terms online. It's much easier to cast people as unredeemable. But offline, on a digital fast, we return to the messier and more complicated world of actual human beings. No one is just a Trump voter. They might also be a Trump voter who is your really nice neighbor, who seems to love their kids as much as you do and loves Flo Rida as much as you do. This one really hit home with me. The power of doing nothing. When I was in my early 20s, I played in a band, and I used to do all of my lyric writing during these little moments of downtime that I would have, when I was bored or spacing out, riding the bus, waiting in line for coffee, with nothing to do at my job. That was when I did my best creative thinking. I never thought about it at the time, but now I realize that that valuable in-between spacing out time is now filled with this mindless scrolling on my phone. And when I went on the digital fast, that time came back to me. Do you really need to share everything you do with everyone in the world, every day, all the time? Yes, it's great for the grandparents to see pictures from the first day of school. And yes, we all agree your new haircut looks great. But how much is lost when we make everything public? Isn't it nice to be able to say that you really did just have to be there? Besides, how much of some once-in-a-lifetime gathering of old friends do you want to waste trying to document everything? So, on Sunday night or Monday morning, when you power everything back on and reconnect, you might realize some things, and you might decide to make some changes. They might be small changes. You might decide to take Facebook off your phone. You might decide that you're not going to take it to bed with you anymore, or that you're going to wait 15 minutes every morning before you turn it on and just enjoy your coffee in silence. Maybe you'll decide you're not going to bring it to the dinner table with you, or you're not going to use it on Sundays. You might realize what's really sacred to you. The point of the digital fast is to take back control in the relationship. These devices that we carry around with us too often set the terms. They dictate when we abruptly end a conversation. They take our attention away from our kids. And yes, sometimes they even listen in on our conversations and keep track of where we are and how we're spending our money. When you go on a digital fast, you are reminded that you have a lot more say in setting the terms than you might think. My students are immersed in the digital world. So am I. Most likely, so are you. So it's not an option for most of us to opt out or disengage. But that's not what this is about either. This is about examining our relationship to technology. Is it a healthy relationship? These devices that we carry around are miraculous and powerful tools. I realize that more profoundly than ever. But they are tools, and we typically put tools away when we're done using them. I think this is a great and valuable experience for everyone to try at least once a year. And ask yourself, if you can't go 48 hours in a year without your devices and screens, what does that say about your relationship to your family, your work, your community, and the natural world? So what do you say? These guys might be skeptical, but I think you can do it. Thanks.